So they put a rat in a container, now note this, half filled with water and no way out. The rat swam for a couple of minutes and then drowned. But then they put a second rat into a container with a possibility of escape. That there was a chance for it to be able to get out of that. It swam for several hours before it drowned. What was the difference? You say, well, there's a lot of things. Maybe one knew how to swim and the other one didn't, all right? And this was their conclusion. They didn't know how to put it because they were scientists, but they made this statement. As much as an animal can understand about hope, you gave one the opportunity, the possibility of getting free, of escaping. And what did it give? Strength, energy. I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. You take that away and you give to an animal or a person hopelessness and failure and pain and sorrow and death is nearby. As a counselor for years, the most difficult thing I ever had to deal with was when I was talking with a person of total hopelessness. Hope is absolutely essential to happiness. And so when an individual doesn't have hope, they can't be happy. And I got on the website and I started reading. There's a guy, Dawkins, who has a website, and all the atheists of modern day come to this website, and they're all talking. And I wanted to read you a little bit about what this one guy said. His name was Merritt. And he said this: I am in my 30s and have been an atheist since I remember thinking about these issues. I suppose it was because my parents did not expose me to the religion prior to the age of reason. In any case, I never have been happy about it. Okay? I tried a few times in my life and in my youth to become a believer, but I just couldn't do it. The idea that there is a loving God is obviously, patently ridiculous. Religion seems to obviously be an attempt to suffice meaning into a meaningless world and remove the fear of death. But without it, how do you feel these two very human needs? You see what he's saying? He's saying, I reject that there is a kind and loving God, but what do I do with all of the feelings that come because I've rejected that God, right? That's what he's saying. For me, it is miserable because I am consumed by terror of death and the meaninglessness it casts on my entire life. Now remember, this is from atheists to atheists. These are individuals who they consider themselves, they're not ashamed of it. They're putting their name on the dotted line. They're saying, I believe in atheism, but he's being real here. He's saying, my struggle is, how do I get away from feelings of remorse or despair or pain or death? What do I do? So he's asking that question. He's putting it out there. He says, it is miserable because I am consumed by the terror of death and the meaninglessness it casts upon my entire life and everything I love. Yes, I tell myself the Epicurus argument, that was a philosopher, a Greek philosopher years ago. And he quotes him and he says, where I am, death is not. Where death is, I am not. And I've considered that living for the moment, quote unquote, is all we have. But these things don't soothe my heart. And I go into months of existential dread here and there. How do other atheists, this is his questions, how do other atheists find positive feelings about life? That is a huge question. How do you answer that? How do atheists, and he's an atheist, how do other atheists find positive feelings about life? You know how when you write on the internet and you write something like that and then there's tons of comments on it? I started reading through the comments. Those got really good. There was over 100 comments. Let me just read a few of them. Rodello responded, I guess you have to be content with Epicurus. For me, it's science, knowing all that I can. So a guy's asking, I'm telling myself where death is, I am not. And where death is, I am not, so therefore he says, I guess you just got to be content with that. Nick responded this way, try being an atheist and child-free. He says, I am. I travel, I go wherever I want to. I connect whenever I want to. And he said this, and I'm 42. Third guy said this. Nigel said, some say, quote, death is eventually inevitable. Death is eventually inevitable. Do we agree with that? Yeah, do we find that in Scripture? Yes. It says that every man will die, correct? And it's not really, of course, it goes on. It's not really, of course. Eventually we'll solve this. That was on... And I read and I asked myself the question, hopeless. Hopeless. You see, I hurt for people like this. Why? Because there's no satisfaction in their soul. There's no happiness in their life. Because they've rejected the wellspring of hope. See, when you reject the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and that you say, as these do, there is no life beyond the grave. And I was reading their comments of how they were trying to pump each other. It's okay, it's okay. I mean, you won't know it when it happens anyway, and nobody knows what's going to happen afterwards, so it's just like going to sleep. And they're groping for some hope. And the agony is, we have the hope, and we tell them and they don't want anything to do with it. You can't be happy without hope. Happiness is the enjoyment of hope. There's one thing that you'll learn as you'll see this, and I've told you before that things are going to get worse in America as they get worse in the world. But there's one thing that you can't break, and this is a point to make and to remember. You can't break a man who has hope. You can kill him, you can hurt him, you can persecute him, you can bring him low, you can take away everything that he has, but a man who has integral hope that is not based upon his circumstances, you cannot break. You cannot. And so Christian after Christian after Christian who is being martyred today in our world, and I will tell you this, the individuals who are killing them and seeing the lack or seeing them not fold into hopelessness, it affects them. And I would almost be a prophet and tell you that in the future you'll hear about individuals who have killed Christians and watched how they died and said, I want what they want. Why? Because you can't break a man who has hope. You can take away all that he has, but if he still has hope apart from that, you can't break that man. Hope is the assurance and the anticipation of good. It's the assurance and anticipation of good. And Peter writes that here. He says, you rejoice with joy unspeakable, full of glory. Hope, happiness is based and founded and motivated by hope. To be happy, one must assure himself of what is to come. His joy is indeed shallow if he denies the thought of the future for any security of the present. And that's what those individuals were trying to do. The joy, the wonder, the smile of life is reserved for those who have a hope bigger than themselves and their circumstances. Pascal said it this way, happiness is neither within us only or without us. It is the union of ourselves with God. Pascal was kind of a smart guy. Yeah, would you say? Yeah. All right. Happiness is neither within us only or without us. It is our union with God. And the third thing I want to bring to you before we conclude is this. Hope has a name. What's the name? Jesus Christ. Hope has a name, Jesus Christ. You're in 1 Peter, if you'll turn to Colossians, over a couple books to your left. Colossians chapter 1.